tonight at the red carpet welcome for Vladimir Putin arriving in North Korea. Putin, of course, has praised North Korea for supporting the war in Ukraine. Here's Martha Raddatz tonight.
Tonight, two of America's fiercest adversaries together on North Korean soil. Vladimir Putin arriving in Pyongyang for the first time in nearly a quarter of a century, greeting the Russian president on the red carpet, Kim Jong-un, talking animatedly, each leader insisting the other enter the limousine first. But this is a relationship born out of need. Kim seeking help from Russia with nuclear and ballistic missile technology, and Putin increasingly relying on North Korea for hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds and missiles in his fight against Ukraine.
And happy Saturday and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, June 22nd, 2024, and we're so happy you decided to spend some time with us. We've been gone for a little while, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. I'll explain a lot of that at the end of the show while we haven't been here. But Val Atkinson is here, which is the most important thing, because he needs to explain why the world is about to blow up. And hey, Val, welcome back to The Deal.
Thank you, Ed. I don't know if I can explain that, but I definitely want to talk about it.
Well, so we're gonna talk about it because we've been gone for about a month, and of course the world never stops spinning when we're gone. So things are still happening. I'm gonna jump right to international stuff because there's a lot to catch up on. Donald Trump's buddy, Vladimir Putin, was with Trump's other buddy and Dennis Rodman's buddy, Kim Jong-un, this week over in North Korea. And of course, you know, this the whole stage thing with the people waving the flags with Putin arriving in North Korea. But there's some real meat to this that I think that people need to think about. What's your first take on Putin going to see Un in North Korea?
Well, when I first heard about the meeting, I thought that it was timely on Putin's part simply because he was running low on ammunition, particularly long-range artillery, and some other things that North Korea had in abundance. And we know that North Korea is having problems agriculturally and other ways of means of feeding their population. So this was a great opportunity to not only go in and have some mutual agreements about I'll give you this and you give me that, but it was a way to put something else on the plate of the West. Something else that the United States and the Western allies have to worry about before we just go in and say, okay, Korea, you can't do this anymore. And if you do that, we're going to attack you. Now, if we do that, we've just started World War III because Russia now is going to come to the aid immediately, I think the language says, come to the aid of North Korea should anyone decide to attack her, commit some other act of aggression. So that puts another little sweetener in the whole recipe there. Now there's something else that the West has to consider before we do whatever we were thinking about doing with North and South Korea. And Putin gets to get more weaponry. And he gets to help his buddy over there with some of their domestic agricultural problems. So I thought that was a good deal. But at the same time, I found that China was visiting with Iran. And I'm thinking, now this is too much for a coincidence here. Could it be that what would have been called the Axis in World War II is now a compilation of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, those four entities that the West has to think about when we want to continue our world domination. So that's problematic in all respects now. China has gone even beyond this whole notion of protecting Taiwan. So now we got to take a look at whether we back Israel. If Israel wants to attack Iran, what do we do if China decides to attack Taiwan? Do we go in there? What do we do if we don't like what North Korea is doing with their testing of weapons and they're shooting over the border at South Korea? We got to think twice now before we do anything about any of that, because we could be inviting the start of World War III with China and their billion-man population, and Russia with their over 6,000 hydrogen weapons. Mm-hmm. And I emphasize the word hydrogen because the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in 1945 is a firecracker compared with the hydrogen bomb. And Russia has over 6,000 of them. There's no country on the planet that has more nuclear weapons than Russia. So just can't do anything lightly because we don't like their foreign policy.
Yeah. Well, I hate to bring this up, but when I was introducing that question to you, I did say that Donald Trump was the friend of Putin and Un, and he seems to not have a problem with Xi because he said that he was a strong leader or whatever. And the Republicans in Congress have seemed to line up as supporters of Putin. And then by virtue of their staunch support of Trump would then mean that they probably are okay with Un and Xi. Now, they do, draw the line at Iran, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. But how does American politics, this is an election year, play into any of this? Will Donald Trump say, oh, hey, if I'm president, all this is cured because I'm buddies with all these dictators? And that seems to be what Marjorie Taylor Greene and those folks say, is that, they don't have a problem with Putin. The real problem is, Zelensky in Ukraine, right? So how does American politics play into any of this, domestic politics?
Well, the way the domestic politics plays in, Ed, is it gives Trump another Trump card to play, because he's going to say he's the only one that can resolve these issues if there comes a time that there's some conflict between Xi and Putin and the West and on. That he's the only one that can stop him because they respect him and he respects them. With Biden in office, he's going to claim falsely there could be World War III. So he's going, you got to understand when you talk about the prospects of what Trump might say, is that he has no problem with lying. I mean, the truth is something that we have to worry about. But Trump has no problem with that. So he just uses it as another tool to get his message across and to have us thinking the way he would have us think. And truth doesn't play a role in it. So he's going to use it to his advantage to talk about he's the only one that can resolve that issue. He's going to paint this gloomy picture that if we re-elect Biden, we may be setting ourselves up for World War III, and he's the only one that can stop it.
Yeah. I want to remind you, you're either looking at or listening to The Deal with Ed Clark and Val Atkinson. It's Saturday, June 22nd, 2024. We're trying to get caught up. We've been gone for about a month. A lot of stuff going on that we'll talk about at the end of the program. But Val, one of the other things you mentioned is Hezbollah and Israel, and what's happening there. Clearly, Israel has pushed the Palestinians as far south as you can go. They're all the way down at the Egyptian border, and folks are either in the desperate situation of having to pay a bunch of money to try to get into Egypt so they can get out and get dispersed somewhere else, right? My thought is Israel's goal is to clear out Gaza completely. And then you'll see this new map that gets drawn that says, hey, it's not just occupied territory, it belongs to Israel. Because there's nobody there. Well, there's nobody there because you ran everybody out, right? And then so now Israel proper will also include all that territory that was Gaza and extend into the West Bank and all the way Golan Heights, all the way up to Jordan, so on and so forth. And there's no place for a Palestinian state. And people like Netanyahu will say, hey, well, they left, So, it's sort of like Americans did with the Native Americans, right? Well, they gave us the land, or they decided to move west when they lived in North Carolina, and they just happen to be in Oklahoma now, right? so they're going to say, oh, these people happen to be in Egypt or Algeria, or wherever they went to, yada yada yada. People without a land. So on that front, what is the end game for Netanyahu in Israel? And then beyond that, there's discord amongst Israelis. I happened to be in Cary, North Carolina last night, and there was a parade of trucks with Palestinian flags that just rode around Cary almost all evening yesterday evening, and blasting out, Israel out of Palestine. Of course, it's caused discord here in America. But tell me what Netanyahu's end game is here.
Netanyahu, Ed, is trying to stay out of jail. He is in trouble. He knows that once the fighting stops and there is some peace accord or whatever, the attention goes back to his legal troubles. He's not going to be in office. All indications are that he will serve some jail time. He's trying to postpone that as long as he can. Even if he comes out of this, the best thing that could happen to him is that things get so bad that there has to be some type of change in the form of government that Israel has. And that would mean that the judicial system has to change significantly to throw out all of the problems that he's had, and thereby he will escape jail time. That seems to be imminent. So he has a personal reason, to keep this thing going. As you have said, he's always been on the side of people that says there will be no Palestinian state. Well, there are 3 or 4, maybe half dozen or so countries already that have recognized Palestine as a state now already, set up embassies and started the whole process. So it's just going to be up to the United States, Great Britain, and a few of other Western countries to start coming along with the rest of the world at some point before it goes too far. And Israel decides that it wants all of the Middle East. That's the way things started in Germany, little by little. Austria, Poland, next thing you know is Paris, So we got to be real careful with this guy, Netanyahu, because it's not only about what he's doing to the Palestinians, it's what he could do in dragging us, the United States, into a war, trying to protect him. We've already decided that there is a limit, a mileage limit, as to how far into Russia Israel can fire some of its long-range artillery pieces. We don't want it fired at a place that's going to cause maximum damage to Russian equipment and personnel, because we don't know what Russia is going to say about that. So Netanyahu is pushing some very dangerous buttons right now. And I think that he is about to have to make a very serious decision about where he stands. Because the United States is in a position now that it could have a permanent halt to weapons and aid that it sends to Israel until she decides to act in a different way, until she changes her behavior. And that's where Netanyahu is right now. He's on the precipice of really having something bad done to him, either by the Americans or by his own folks through the judiciary process.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Netanyahu and his problem with his legal issues. Sounds like his buddy, Donald Trump. But I digress because, the last piece of this, and you mentioned that all that Russian equipment that sits over in Iran and sits in Syria, whatever, and Russian troops that are actually in the Middle East that are sitting there providing support for the people on the other side, it makes things much more complicated, right? They're at Russia's in the region. There's guns pointed at them from Israel that was material that was supplied by the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So you shoot a missile deep enough into Syria or Jordan or somewhere like that, you may hit a Russian soldier, and then all hell breaks loose. And that's what complicates things by having people like on the right who some of these religious folks, they want an all-out war because they want Armageddon to come because they think they're going to be lifted up into the sky and be with the baby Jesus, which, and I'm not joking. I mean, they want a full conflagration there. They don't want necessarily the state of Israel to survive as it is. They want this second coming to come about, and they're willing to do anything for that to be unleashed. Hey, you know what? I hear some music, so that means we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears. We're going to come to the United States. I thought it was important that we catch up on some of the international stuff. But we'll come to the United States. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about Trump and his travails and pending presidential debate and all that and much more. Stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
See it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Kim and Putin met once before, last year in Russia, but this North Korea trip, with hours of one-on-one meetings planned for Wednesday and the streets of Pyongyang lined with Putin's portrait, sends a strong signal to the West that the so-called axis of dictators is only growing stronger.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We were trying to catch everybody up on some international news. Val, in the break, I showed a little clip of Putin and Kim Jong-un shaking hands on the tarmac there. And we talked about, there is always, and it has been for a long time, all this pressure about possibly World War III, right? Since the Cold War, Russia has a lot of weapons that can blow a lot of stuff up. Kim Jong-un, who is a friend of Donald Trump, he wants to have his own weapons. Then, of course, we have this Middle East thing that's been going on for some time now that's very problematic that we can't seem to get a hold of. And I think that Donald Trump just exacerbates the whole issue of whether or not we can get a solution to any one of those problems, let alone all of them. But we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. What I do want to switch gears, and I want to move to the Supreme Court. We've been talking about the court a lot over the last year. One of the big cases in the Supreme Court was a bump stock case. I'm going to want you to explain what that is and what it means. But it was a real curious case on Thursday. The court ruled 8-1 that said that you could keep guns out of the hands of people who had restraining orders. I had expected it not to be 8-1, to tell you the truth. I thought it was going to be one of those 5-4 kind of toss up things. But then when I thought about it, maybe there is a line that they will draw, on guns. But it still, Alito, the guy who flies flags upside down, and Clarence Thomas, whose wife wants to overthrow the government, they're still on the Supreme Court, and they worry me a lot. So let's back up then. Let's go to bump stocks first. What do you know about that case? What does it mean? And then the other gun case about borrowing guns from people who, have issues and want to put their hands on people.
Let's start in the beginning. Back in the 1920s, the Supreme Court decided that it was unconstitutional to have what we call now Tommy guns or machine guns or whatever, because you had people like Bonnie and Clyde and Al Capone and all these other kind of people that were really shooting up the public. Now, what a bump stock is, rolling forward to the 21st century, it's a piece that can be connected to an AR-15, a number of similar weapons, to make it fire like a machine gun. And as long as you're holding the trigger, it will continually spit out rounds at a very, very high rate. And people thought how things would have gone at Sandy Hook, at Uvalde, and places like that, had people had a fully automatic machine gun. Just horrendous. So normally and naturally, we say you shouldn't have those. Well, the National Rifle Association and some other people that need to prepare for the race war, the impending race war, decided that they wanted to allow people to have automatic weapons if they like, through the affixing of bump stocks. And lo and behold, we have it. We had a 8-1 vote on that. And now, if somebody cares to do so, they can turn a regular AR-15, which is a very deadly weapon already, doesn't need any help, into a automatic machine gun. An M60. In World War II, they called it Browning automatic rifle. Then you had the M60 in Vietnam. And then you always had the 50 caliber machine gun on Jeeps, on airplanes, on tanks. This is the weapon of war, Ed. It has no need, no purpose in civilian communities. You can't use it to hunt animals. So the hunting is out of the way. The only time you can use it is to hunt human beings, just to kill other human beings. And I was very, very surprised that we went that route, to allow people to buy and install bump stocks to make a semi-automatic weapon an automatic weapon. I mean, I can't see the purpose in it, the good in it, other than to make somebody richer by selling bump stocks through regular gun dealers. I can't see who wins in this other than the NRA and ultra right wingers. I can't see who wins in this, Ed, other than organizations like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and anybody else who Dylan Ruth type people. I can't see who else wins in this.
So did it surprise you then, though, that then they come right back and then they borrow guns from people who have restraining orders. I mean, it sort of, like I said, it gets to the schizophrenia of this court, right? That you can't figure them out, which will lead to the next discussion once we finish this, how they're going to rule on some other cases. It's like, you're flipping a coin where they're going to come down, because I can't figure out, like you, how you find a constitutional ground for allowing somebody to have a military weapon.
Right. I mean, they've really misused the Second Amendment. Second Amendment had nothing to do with what we're doing right now. It had to do with making sure we had strong militias or National Guard, if we use today's language. That's what the Second Amendment is all about. It's not about having guns to ward off Russia and China for coming in. You can't have a midnight special, a 22 pistol, or even a 50 cal machine gun in the hands of a regular citizen to fight off a Russian tank, an airplane, or a missile. I mean, what do you need with a AR-15 to fight a hydrogen bomb? Please, can't happen.
Yeah. So I know for a fact, Val, that a lot of this, again, when you boil it down, is this sort of in the back of the head of a lot of people on the right about this looming race war, civil war kind of nonsense. Because you're not, like you said, you're not fighting any invading Chinese or Russians or anything like that. And I don't suspect war will be that way anyway. Nobody's ever really invaded America except for the British, War 1812, and burned down the White House and whatever else they were able to do then. Nobody's successfully been on our soil, and I don't expect weapons of war to be like that anymore, right? It's not going to be hand-to-hand fighting through the streets of Detroit against the Russians. And so you having bump stock on your gun at your house is just for your ego or whatever. I'm not sure. But it leads me again, like I said, to the schizophrenia of this Supreme Court, where you get an 8-1 that says you can borrow guns from people who have restraining orders. But now what you have is some cases that are pending, like, does Donald Trump have immunity? Can he kill his opponent, political opponent, and not face any charges? Can he, commit crimes like he already has? He's a 34-time convicted felon. And still, be able to claim that nobody can touch him other than an impeachment. But if you have an impeachment and you have a Congress like the one that was sitting when he was impeached twice, when they had ample evidence, particularly, I think both times, but particularly the last time, he led an insurrection. He told people to come, and now he's claiming immunity. Okay, here's the question. I guess we could make $1 billion on this if we could find a bet somewhere, because you can bet on anything now. What's the bet on the Supreme Court saying that Trump has some immunity, maybe not blanket immunity, but any immunity at all? What's the court going to say?
Well, Ed, I'm going to answer your question with a question, something that I used to tell my students to never do. I want to answer your question with a question. If they say that Donald Trump, they meaning the Supreme Court, has immunity in carrying out the functions of his office, you can't do anything to him about that. If they say that, and that becomes the law of the land, could Joe Biden order SEALs Team 6 to go kill Donald Trump right now? I think the answer is simple. Is yes.
The answer would be yes. Yeah.
He could do that and not be punished for it. So in my mind, Donald Trump should be saying, hey, hold on, make sure when you come out with this immunity thing, it doesn't give Joe Biden the right to kill me now. You got to make it so that it doesn't include capital crime. So you got to make it so that there's a time limit to it, or you got to make it so whatever, because he's opening up Pandora's box here, Ed, that you're going so far from real democracy and accountability that you're just trying to legalize chaos is all you're trying to do. It becomes stupid anymore. So to answer your question, I'm saying that they are going to tell Trump, no, we've done all we can for you. We've held back on ruling this to give you the delay that you need so that the answer will not affect this year's election. That's your present. We've done that for you, but we're not going to give you immunity, because we can't give you immunity and say it's only for the 45th president. It's not for anybody else, this immunity thing. For the 45th president, and it'll be for the 47th president if you get elected, and then it'll quit. Nobody else can have it. And it's not going to work that way.
Well, I hope that's how it works out. I'm not so sure all the time. But one last Supreme Court thing, there's another case that's pending about whether or not you can have an emergency abortion in states that completely outlawed abortion, states like South Dakota that have, and Texas. There's a case pending right now where South Dakota is claiming that even if you're about to die and you need an abortion, you can't get it because that's what their law says, which I think is crazy to me that they're willing to let women die because they want the baby to live, and then they don't take care of the baby. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. I mean, it's, again, back to some sort of crazy configuration of how they see their religion, which brings me to a case that will end up in front of the Supreme Court. Is state of Louisiana now requires the 10 Commandments on every wall of every classroom. If it's a math class, it doesn't, it's not a religion class, it's every class, and includes colleges. If it's a publicly funded college in Louisiana, Val, what the hell? What are they trying to say? When they don't live by any of the 10 Commandments, they want them on the wall. What's that about?
Well, I'll tell you, man, it's the old Confederacy. They'll do anything they can to throw a monkey wrench into the orderly process of these United States of America, because they don't like the way it's run. They never have. They don't think that they lost the war. They've never done that. So any kind of way they can do that. I remember there was a judge in, I believe it was Alabama, not too long ago, who wanted to have the 10 Commandments, or who had the 10 Commandments in his courtroom. They say, you can't do that. Or the Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and Hindu think, when they are asking for justice in your court and they look up there and there's a religious sign up there that happened to be Christian, Can't do that, okay? And now we're coming back. The governor of Louisiana signs a bill put out by the Republican-controlled legislature. And that's the problem with gerrymandering. You can put it all back to that. They get control of the legislature. They pass any kind of law they want to. And if they have a Republican governor, it gets rubber stamped. Even if they don't have a Republican governor like the state of North Carolina, it doesn't matter, because they have a supermajority in the legislature that overrides the governor's veto. So it's a moot point there. But right now, it looks as though the Supreme Court is going to have to decide at some point, is this constitutional, that you can have the 10 Commandments placed in all classrooms, every one of them. And they thought ahead, and they said will be at no cost to the various states and townships, because it's going to be funded by private funds. We ain't talking about the funding. We're talking about the whole business of the First Amendment. That the government has no business taking sides or putting one religion above another. Clear, it's as clear as day in the Constitution, but that doesn't matter to them because they have always thought this was a white Christian nation in the beginning.
Yeah.
And they've done everything that they could do to make it so, a white male property owning Christian nation.
Well, you're
I'm
talking about
anxious to
history.
see how that comes out.
You're talking about history that we don't like to talk about, Val. We don't tell the truth in America. The problem I see with putting the Ten Commandments up is not only all the things you enumerated. Like I said, I think it's already been adjudicated before. You can't. I mean, when the judge tried to do it in Alabama, it was clear that it was not constitutional under any circumstance. We do not have a state religion in the United States, whether people like it or not. Now, some of my friends may even say, "Oh, no, kids need to have some sort of guidance." Do that at home.
Right.
The religious instruction, or send them to a religious school. The irony here, as we wrap this up, the irony here is that the Ten Commandments comes out of the Old Testament, which is the Jewish part of it, and Jewish people don't even take it the way Christians do, which is kind of what's happened over the course of the millennia, right? The Christians have taken over the Jewish religion and co-opted a lot of it for themselves. But I'll digress, and I don't want to get anybody real mad at me. Plus, I hear some music in my ear. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some stuff. Some guy has a new book that I want to talk about. I think his name is Val Atkinson. I want to talk about Mark Robinson. I want to talk about the Negro Leagues being recognized by Major League Baseball and a whole lot more. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
What do you make of this new law in your home state?
Well, I think given the storm season is coming up, we don't need the Ten Commandments. We need the Hail Mary. It would be, much more appropriate for what we face with here in Louisiana. I don't know which one they're going to put up. There's 10 different versions of the Ten Commandments, and our schools are so underfunded that I'm not sure half the kids even know how to read them. But it's one of the dumbest waste of time I've ever seen in my life.
The schools in Louisiana traditionally have ranked very low in the rankings of schools in America. It's gone up, I think. Pre-K through 12 has gone up a little bit in recent years, but not by much.
Governor Edwards, John Bell did a great job. I mean, he got us, off the bottom, but Governor Landry is intent on putting us back on the bottom, it seems like.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. Been chopping up a little bit. Spent this last part talking a lot about the Supreme Court. Val, we got to do a full-blown program on conservative religious thought and how that has permeated American culture and consequently has caused a whole bunch of problems. But we'll save that for another time. We got a lot of topics that we could cover. I want to do a couple real quick and then get on to the big thing I want to talk about, which is a book that you've written. But the presidential debate is next week. There's some rules this time where they can cut the mic of the person who's not speaking, no audience, yada, yada, yada. Give me the odds of Donald Trump showing up for this thing. I think he will because he's an attention whore and he needs to be on TV and he needs to try to score some points. I'm not sure the format suits him that well. However, he needs to be seen, and that's the only calculation he ever makes, right? That if he's on TV, then it's working in his favor. But what's your assessment of how this debate's going to go, and what are the stakes in this debate?
Well, if it's up to Donald Trump's handlers, he won't participate. And I say that because as they go through preparing him for this match, they're going to find out that this guy has got some cognitive issues of his own. And the last thing they want the public to see is Donald Trump's cognitive shortcomings, because that's supposed to be one of his strong points, that Biden has shortcomings and he's the brilliant 21-year-old, and they don't want that to happen. But if the debate goes on, because I understand right now that he doesn't want to practice, or he's not practicing because he's going to wing it like he does everything else. Then it comes down to the cutting of the mic. This is being run by CNN. CNN is the media outlet that is challenging Fox for the ear of the listening audience that happens to be conservative or right wing. And they have left the confines that used to be habitated by MSNBC and CNN, and now it's only MSNBC on the left. But the point here is that I don't trust CNN to really do fair by cutting the mic. I think what they'll do is they'll allow Trump to cut off Biden or interrupt him, and they'll say, Mr. Trump, you're aware that you can't do that, and next time you do it, we'll have to mute your microphone. Okay, go on. And then he does it again, and maybe they'll mute him, but they'll mute him slowly. Watch out for those kinds of things to see what role CNN plays in this. And if they do play that kind of role, I want somebody to run this tape back that you and I are talking right now, so that we can say, well, I told you so. That's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So I just hope that Biden doesn't make a gaffe. If I were his handlers, or if I was the chief handler, I would not have let him participate in this debate in the first place. It's a lose-lose situation. He has nothing to win.
Yeah.
He has nothing to prove. He can't come out of this. The only win he can brag about coming out of this debate is that he didn't lose, or he didn't commit a gaffe. So there's no positive for him that you didn't commit a gaffe. That's what you want to go on TV and run the risk of. It's no win for him there. I don't see him winning, except if Trump really makes some horrible, continuous, monumental cognitive gaffes himself. That's the only way Biden can come out with a positive win.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bad idea for Biden to do it in the first place. When I heard the announcement, I'm like, to what end? The guy has 34 convictions that you're debating,
right?
And the court still has to decide whether or not he has immunity. Blah blah blah. There's just a whole raft of things that all you had to do was make commercials and spend as much money as you can on commercials, and get a better effect than you can by standing on stage with him, because you stand next to him. It gives him a bit of gravitas, right? That he's a legitimate opponent, right? I would create, or not create, I would continue the narrative that he's disqualified because all these convictions for one, and yada yada yada. And you couldn't do that by going on Biden by himself, going on TV, right. Not just commercials. He could go on to Jimmy Kimmel and all the nighttime shows, all the daytime shows. Just do that and get to more people than you can with the debate. But you do a debate and you make a mistake, like you say, or the debate is not handled fairly, then now you got these clips that Fox and them play over and over again that don't do him any favors. I wish they weren't doing it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am, but I think they'll regret that they did it. Even if Biden wins, right? the thing outright, what do you get? I don't
Yeah, what do you get out of that?
yeah, I don't understand what the outcome is supposed to be. The other thing I wanted to say real quick before we shift to the final part here, Washington Post has a series that they're doing, and there's an article this week by Robert Samuels called "Public Memories, Private Struggles." And the reason why I bring that up, Val, is we just had Juneteenth, and so I hope people had a chance to reflect then. But the article in a series of articles is about the dying of people who actually participated in some of the seminal moments in the civil rights struggle. And this last piece was about people who participated in the freedom rides. And they're in their late 80s, early 90s now, right? Even though they were in their 20s, then that's 60 years ago. They were in their 20s and 30s when they took those rides through Mississippi and Alabama and throughout the South. And who's going to be the keeper of those legacies when right now Ron DeSantis doesn't want you to discuss anything at all? And if you do, you're supposed to say slaves got to benefit from slavery because they learn how to do shit. And then you got all these places like the North Carolina university system that says you can't have DEI or you can't do this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. And HBCUs, even though I thought they were going to be stepping up to take a more active role, to take on students that, maybe weren't going to PWIs. We have one right here in Raleigh, St. Augustine's, that is struggling to even stay open. And there's other ones in the same position. Val, where do we get people to talk about this legacy of the civil rights movement, the importance of the civil rights movement? And then who defines what the civil rights movement is going to be going forward to make sure that, all these things that these white folks who are afraid want to have happen, how do we keep them from doing it if we don't have any collective memory of what happened in the past, and then certainly don't have any leadership on the next end? Where is that going to come from?
Well, we're going to have to depend upon people like you, Ed, to do things like the deal with Ed Clark. We're going to have to depend upon people like me writing books. We're going to have to depend upon people like the good Reverend Dr. Barber, William Barber, in his new book called White Poverty. We have got to continue to do the hard work because they're stopping us off at the pass when it comes to, we thought the DEI was going to be a good thing. Marching in the street has lost its luster over the years. We don't do that. People don't come out as much as they used to do those kind of things when we had the Freedom Bus rides and the March on Washington and the Edmund Pettus Bridge March and those kinds of things. I think the last huge march or gathering that we had that really was big numbers was probably the Million Man March. We haven't had anything of that nature since then. So it's going to have to be the small people with the big voices telling other people. And as the Black Panthers used to say, each one teach one. There's got to be those kinds of things happening, Ed, to get the message out, because they're cutting us off at the knees when it comes to official things, affirmative action, DEI, funding for HBCUs, whatever. They're trying to take a page out of DeSantis' book and make it difficult for people to know their history. And they figure if you can't tell your history, I can tell mine in a way that tells yours. And then I can fashion it as I choose to, any way I want to.
Well, that can selectively leave things out, which I'm gonna tell you that I'm surprised about one thing, Val. The Major League Baseball is including Negro League statistics now. And then that would probably mean more Negro League players going into the MLB Hall of Fame, that kind of thing. and then we lost probably, if he wasn't the best ball player ever, he's certainly in the pantheon in the top five. Him, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays passed away, right? So what do you make of Major League Baseball and them now deciding to include Negro League statistics at the same time? We just talked about all the things that they were trying to do on the other side, where they want to not talk about Black history, so on and so forth. What do you think the Major League Baseball is up to with that?
I think they did the right thing. It's just a little late. Should have done it long time ago, to recognize some of these folks when they were in their prime, when they were in the youth of their existence, so that they could have enjoyed this along with their families and those kinds of things. There are very few people around, if any, that really played in the Negro Leagues now, and played well and deserved the kind of honor. When I first heard about it, I thought of an anecdotal piece that maybe this thing could shift over and help us out, Ed, not you and I, but my generation. I attended I.C. Norcom High School in Portsmouth, Virginia, and I played on the basketball team there. We had a young man that played on the team with us. This is back in 1960, and he scored 127 points in one game by himself. This is before the three-point shot. 8-minute quarters, no three-point shot. He scored 127 points by himself. But if you look in Virginia books, you won't see that as the record. And the reason, they acknowledge that he did this, but they won't say that he has the record, because Virginia's school system was legally segregated at that time. And we played in the colored division or the colored league. And then there was another association or conference for white people. And they only recognized the records coming out of that white conference. So they don't recognize Johnny Morris is his name. They didn't recognize Johnny Morris as being an athlete who scored 127 points by himself. He went on to play at Norfolk State, got a tryout with the New York Knicks, didn't make the team, but at least he got a tryout there. Every place he went, they recognized his 127 points. And maybe now that they're going back recognizing the accomplishments of people in the Negro League, those statistics, maybe they can go back and take a look at the legislature in the state of Virginia to wipe out that line between the two conferences, one black and one white, back in 1960, and give Johnny Morris his due of scoring 127 points in one game.
Well, Lord have mercy, that's a lot of points. That's Wilt Chamberlain didn't even do that.
That's right. That's right.
Wow, that's incredible. Speaking of basketball, one last thing before we talk about this Val Atkinson guy. The Celtics won the NBA championship, and for the 18th time. And them and the Lakers, you kind of go back and forth or whatever, of the greatest basketball franchises. Which brings me up. So the Celtics, whatever. But the Lakers, the other team that's always in that mix, they just hired somebody, a young white guy who, he's been a pretty good commentator, JJ Redick, to be their head coach. No experience. I don't even think he's ever coached Pee Wee basketball. At least you've done that, Val. And now he's going to coach the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't know if maybe some young black players, former players, gotten a chance like that, but I don't think so. At least not with a team like the Lakers. Why is another Dookie getting a chance to coach in the first place, Val?
Oh, you put me on the spot because I'm a Duke fan, but I'm a bigger basketball fan in general, And I've been coaching for a long, long time. I'm still coaching now, Parks and Rec, coaching little teenage boys. And coaching is something that I hold dear and near to me. And I just have a problem with people ascending to top levels of the coaching profession without having to go through some steps of preparation down below, even at the recreation, AAU, high school, middle school, college coaching, wherever, before you ascend to the top rank. And coaching is like management. It is management. And the definition of management is getting things done through people. It's a people business, first of all. And you can know all the X's and the O's you want to know in coaching, but if you don't know how to motivate your players, how to be a problem solver, how to make the people trust you, and I might say like you, you're going to have a problem coaching, because it's not a Lombardi type circumstance anymore where people feared Lombardi, they hated Lombardi, but they did what he said because that was the nature of things. That day in coaching has gone, where people are afraid of their coach and they do what he says because he has some kind of mystical power. No, you got to prove it. The NBA is a players' league. And you're not going to go in there just because you have a reputation of being a good, smart player. And I don't know where he's, gave that as an example that he's such a brainy guy when it comes to knowing something about basketball. Where has he shown this?
Yeah.
On the court? In writings? Where has he shown that? It's just assumed that by being on TV and his podcast now, that he talks in a certain kind of way to make people think he knows a lot about the game, but has never coached in his life. Other than the fact they did give him credit. I think he coached 1 year his son's league that they needed a coach when he was 7 or 8 years old, and he coached that team. I don't know how that compares with coaching the Los Angeles Lakers, though.
Well, like I said, you have more coaching experience. I'd rather for you to be the coach of the Lakers, but that's all another
right.
That's a whole nother story. Hey, Val, before we run out of time, I said I want to talk about, you mentioned Reverend Barber has a new book, but you have a book as well. And it's a revision to a work that you had previously done. Talk to me about that book and what you were trying to do in updating it and where we could get it from and all those kind of things.
Yeah, well, the title of the book, Ed, is Distractions, Distortions, Deceptions, and Outright Lies. And I go through the book talking about how conservatives approach the whole business of politics in order to deceive, control, and manipulate the process and people to gain some type of an advantage. And I distilled it down to some things that I call the G's. And it's the 6 G's: God, guns, gays, and I call it gestation for abortion. And then I got genealogy for race relations and diversity and cultural issues. And the last G is gerrymandering. And I go into great detail on all of these G's about how conservatives are using these to distort, deceive, and otherwise just lie to us about what's going on in politics in order to gain political advantage. The book is, as you said earlier, is a second edition. The first edition was published in 2017. And I published this book. It came out this month. So we're talking a 7-year layover, and a lot of things have happened. So I wanted to update it and bring it up to date. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of stuff in there about Trump and about what happened in the 2016 election, what happened in the 2020 election, and the possibilities of what could happen in the 2024 election. So each of the categories, there are some things in there about Dobbs v. Jackson when it comes to gestation. There's a lot of stuff in there when it comes to guns about mass shootings and police actions and things that we call race-related issues in police. So I think that it's very timely, and I was on my publisher the last couple of months. Really, they thought I was going to come up there and really bomb up the place or something. But I knew how critically important timing was to get this book out now as we go into the election cycle for the 2024 general election. The election cycle starts for real on September the 1st. And I wanted to get this out way long before then so people can have an idea of what to look for and how to be evaluating the candidates in this year's very, 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 very critically important election for this nation.
Yeah, because people are going to be voting in a matter of, probably another 60 days. And a substantial number of people are going to vote early, despite.
Let me also say that I forgot. You can go out and get it at Amazon. It's online, Amazon. I would advise you, that's the easiest way to do it. You can go in and put in my name, Val Atkinson, and it'll list all of the 4 books that I've published since 2007. And it's the last one, the second edition of Distractions.
Yeah, and we'll put a link out there for that so you can get a hold of it. I encourage you to buy it. There's a reason why I have Val on here is because he actually knows what he's talking about. A lot of times you'll see the talking heads on TV and they haven't put in much thought or whatever to what they're doing. And I know Val does substantial amount of research in all the stuff he's published. So I will highly recommend that you get that. I'll be getting it myself. So as I have the other books as well. Val, we could talk for another hour or two to try to catch up, but we're not going to do that. What I encourage folks to do is, follow us on the deal with edclark.com. Just go out there. You can subscribe to the RSS feed, and that way you never have to worry about whether or not we're on or not. You'll just get it in your feed. You'll know. But you can also go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, and subscribe. And we encourage you to do that. And tell other people about it. Like I said, the difference with the deal is that we have long conversations. And this is not a 1 minute, little story you get on the news that's focused a certain way. Clearly, I have a political bent. I think that people on the right are crazy, but that's my view. I'm sure they think I'm crazy. But the point is that we have a reason and thought out view of things. Anywho, if you happen to be up at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning and about Foxy 107, 104, there's a program called Connections. I'm on there tomorrow. I got a guest named Precious Lee. She's a filmmaker. She's talking about a condition she has called HS. The whole name is way too long for me to say, so I encourage you to listen to that. But we also talk about the need for African Americans to get screenings because she has had 3 heart attacks before she's 40 years old. And it's a genetic condition that, a lot of other African Americans have that they don't even realize they have it. And it's probably because they're not talking to the doctor or at least not getting screening. So please listen to that tomorrow on Foxy 107, 104. You can go to their website and get the link. We'll also repost that too as well. Come back with us next week and for another edition of The Deal. And like I always tell you to do, go out and do something good for somebody today. And I really do mean that. And we'll see you the next time. Bye.